Oh, I'm grateful to be here with you all. So thank you for coming back, especially after lunch. This is good. This is good. We'll do some things maybe to keep you going here for the next few minutes. Um, as many of you know, some of you that have been here before, one of the things I like to do just to make it a little more intimate is if you can relate to anything that I'm saying, or if I'm asking for something from the audience, anything that they say, just put your hand up in the air and then bring it right back down. It's just a way to acknowledge with empathy that I kind of get it. I get that. I've been there. I can relate. So just feel free to do that if that's appropriate, today or tomorrow. Either way. So I have some slides here. Oh, other logistics. If you're interested in these slides or the quotes on the slides, there's a sign-up sheet in the back. Just put in your email, and then I'll send those out to you all. So some of them are on the handout, but some of them are not. And that will be the case tomorrow as well. There's a number tomorrow that are not on the handout. This is just today's handout. Also, if you're interested in a bibliography from the Educarian Learning Center, an updated one, you can sign up for it there. And I send out a poem or an unlearning insight, it's called, every day. And you can sign up for those as well, or information about programs, and you can unsubscribe to any of those. But anyway, that's in the back. I think that's the logistics. All right, so here's the topic, praying and practicing the theme of oneness from the Gospels. The Gospels have a contemplative dimension within them. And to me, this dimension is God's very invitation to every one of us to share the very essence of divinity. My understanding of contemplation is that instead of us trying to get in touch with God, it's listening so we let God get in touch with us. And so that's really what this is about, our 45 minutes here today. So I'm not going to be talking really fast with tons of things. There's going to be some spaces for you to really listen, to let these ideas land. I think of it as sort of water just pouring into a plant. The plant doesn't go, oh, I need it here, quickly give it to me there. The water goes where it needs to go, and it all works together. And so just your opening and willingness to explore these ideas is what we're about. So it's all about allowing and surrendering everything to God. So in order to do this, we need to create radical spaces for communion with love. I love thinking about that idea. You know, what might that mean for you? Just hold that thought a little bit. Do I create radical spaces for communion with love? Capital L, love. So today I'd like to open up the biblical foundation for this and then actually have us practice one of these forms of contemplation. Ancient forms. It's been around for thousands of years. So what is contemplative living? This is on your sheet, but it's an abiding state of union itself in which one is habitually and continuously moved both in prayer and action by Spirit. Again, this is on the handout. It seems to me this is what we all want. To be in that abiding state of union in which we're habitually, it's like second nature, it's like natural and continuously moved, both in prayer and action, not just thinking, not just praying, but in action by Spirit. Every moment in that space of oneness. So devotion to a contemplative life means that this is our number one priority. Anybody signing up for that? 4 of you? Okay, good. All right. Okay. That's because you need extra. All right. There are clearly so many ways to do this. And we're just going to focus on one, specifically one prayerful way that has a Christian emphasis. But my experience is that it crosses all denominations and is relevant even if you don't identify with a denomination. This kind of prayerful practice is commended and modeled in the Bible and been adopted by pretty much every religious tradition that's been recorded, and wisdom tradition on the planet in various forms. It's explained in detail in a book some of you might have read called The Cloud of Unknowing. That was written in Middle English by an unknown 14th century mystic. May or may not be new to you, but that's sort of what brought it into current. Some of you've tried to read it. It's not, they've translated it. It's not still in Middle English. You can get it that way if that's what works for you. So in 2004, Thomas Keating assembled a very broad cross-section of Christian contemplative elders at St. Benedictine's Monastery in Snowmass, Colorado. Their focus was to encourage seminaries where church leaders are trained to adopt more of this contemplative focus. That was their idea. So they decided to come up with a working definition for what is contemplative prayer and practice. So these 15 or so people that came together just in a contemplative way, in a quiet way, listening to the divine, this is what they came up with. And I find it so inspiring that I'm using that as the foundation for what we'll all be looking at here. And it is on your sheets, but we're going to go through it just one step at a time before we practice this. Okay, so the first one. The gospel is the core of Christian living. It has within it a contemplative dimension. And the reason I put this down on the sheet there is you may want to really dwell with these later and really have some fun sort of exploring them, walking with them. This dimension is God's invitation to every human being through Jesus Christ to share God's very nature. This was the first of their 4 definitions of contemplative prayer and practice. We could spend hours clearly on each one of these, but my intent is just to anchor contemplative practice in the Bible and then try it out with you. I'm definitely a hit the street kind of guy. So certainly we're invited by Jesus to share God's very nature. I'm sure if we each took time, we could think of a number of passages. I want to share one in particular from the Message Bible, which is from Matthew 16, 24 through 26. This is not on your sheet. I love this, the way it starts. Then Jesus went to work on his disciples. Can't you see it? These dang guys, couldn't I have picked better? Or, what's up with that? You gave me this? So he went to work on his disciples. If I was there, I think that would be appropriate. He'd have to go to work on me. And so, here's what he says. Anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat, just in case you're confused. I am. And he goes on to say, don't run from suffering. Embrace it. I feel like we should just sit with that for a while, although we've kind of been hearing that theme already here this weekend. Yes, it's Matthew 16, 24 through 26. from the Message Bible. Here, it's up here now too. So don't run from suffering, embrace it. Follow me and I'll show you how. That means he didn't run from suffering, he embraced it. He's defining what he did. Self-help is no help at all. I hate it when he says that. I thought that's what I was all about. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to finding yourself, your true self. Fixing the broken me is not what it's about, sort of the self-help. We're talking about self-sacrifice, self-transcendence. Small s becoming capital S. What is that about? How do we move into that? So finding your true self, your divinely, is, to me, finding your divinely authentic self. And that's sharing God's very nature. When you find your authentic heart, when you're in touch with the guidance and the quiet mind, and when you are grounded here and now, present, you are living consciously in God's very nature, here and now. Let's look at part 2. It begins as a way of listening with ears, eyes, and heart. Listening, that's the emphasis. It grows as a desire to know God and to enter into God's love. Interesting that these 12 to 15 people have put that it actually starts with learning to listen with your ears, eyes, and heart here and now. As Dave was saying, let's be human, let's be with each other now. And then it naturally grows as a desire to, if you really listen to somebody, your heart is engaged. It can't be if you're really listening. And that's going to make this compassion, which just, it grows as a desire to know God and to enter into that infinite love. This is made possible, this is the part most people wish I'd skip. This is the part that, this is made possible by a dying to self, or emptying to self, that becomes a radical emptying to God and experience of God's love. Again, what is, really just letting that sort of percolate, marinate with that. What does that mean to really empty to the divine? Listening with ears, eyes, and heart, that says to me that we need to be self-aware, fully conscious, listening more than talking. Most education systems do not do much training in listening. There's a lot of talking, and there's writing and reading, but not too much listening. Practicing our listening deeply with each other and to all sentient beings. This is what indigenous cultures have done for as long as they've been here. They listen to all aspects of nature. This is not possible when we're too full of ourselves, our concerns, our anxieties, and especially our conditioned beliefs. How many of you have read any books by J. Allen Boone? Kinship with All Life, any of those? Okay. Or Adventures in Kinship with All Life. He practiced and taught the ability to communicate with humans, but also with animals, through seeing and honoring the equal oneness of all beings with divine love. It wasn't telepathy. It was much higher than that. It was this communion, really. What Helen was talking about, or I don't know if it's exactly what Helen was talking about, but it's that communion sense. I love what he wrote as the key for this kind of deep listening. That's me with a turtle right outside our house. But here's what he wrote. Blessed are the empty, for they shall be filled. And again, I'm not going to fill in what does that exactly mean for us, but What if we open to that? Are we sufficiently empty so that we can be filled by grace? Here is an example of what we have the record of what Jesus said about emptying to God from the perspective of John in the Message Bible. This is from John 3:5. Unless a person submits to this original creation, which I would say would be Genesis 1, the wind hovering over the waters creation, the invisible moving the invisible moving the visible, a baptism into new life. Unless we submit to that power, that tenderness, that innocence, that creation, it's not possible to enter God's kingdom. So to me, it's worth deeply dwelling with what it means for you to practice a radical emptying to God. What would that mean for you? And experience of God's love. Let's look at part 3. Through a pattern of abiding in God that we call contemplative prayer, a change of consciousness takes place. So this is why engage in contemplative prayer? What's the point? Why would we want to do that? What's the benefit? Through a pattern of abiding in God that we call contemplative prayer, a change of consciousness takes place. This dynamic sharing of God's nature forms each person and opens them to the mind and very life of Christ. That's not all. Challenging them to be instruments of God's love and energy in the world. Highlight flashing lights. In the world. I'll let you reread that to yourself, either up here or on your page, just for a minute. Just be with that for a minute. Many of you may have heard of Parker Palmer. Amazing man, real mentor. He's had a huge influence on my life and work through his books and workshops. I attended one of his weekend workshops a couple of years ago. He's a well-known Quaker educator. He's on the bibliography reading list. Incredible man. I used to do skydiving vision quests and take people skydiving, and we almost got him to go, but he, at the last minute, didn't sign up. But in his first book called To Know As We Are Known, The Spirituality of Education, he talks about how God's nature forms each of us in prayer. And these are the words he's used. And I've used these before, they're just so meaningful to me. So he asks, what do I mean by prayer? Prayer means opening myself. We could just stop right there. But opening myself to the fact that as I reach for the connecting center, the center is reaching for me. I'll suggest to you that the act of opening alone allows that to happen. He goes on to say, as I move toward the heart of reality, reality is moving toward my heart. Look at the verb, move. Toward, embrace the heart of reality. Reality moves towards my heart. As I recollect the unity of life, Life is reconnecting me in my original wholeness. Lots to think about there. Through this emptying to God, we get to open ourselves, move toward the heart of reality, recollect the unity of life. These are active, humbling practices, and they reconnect us with our original wholeness, forming each of us, or one might say reforming or transforming. They challenge us, they call us out to be instruments of God's love and energy in the world. I love this paradox. This deep, quiet listening in stillness fills us with an insatiable desire to express God's dynamic love and nature every moment, everywhere. And it doesn't mean that we're necessarily doing cartwheels everywhere, but that yearning is so there, it's like you can't get out of the way of it. We don't need to figure it out, just open to it. And part 4. Whoops. Guess you get to have 2 of these. There we go. Again, this is on your sheet. This contemplative consciousness, to me, again, this is the effect of contemplative prayer and practice. This contemplative consciousness bonds each person in union with God. It's already there, but consciously we start to get this. We start to feel this. Even unconsciously, we start to feel that connection. But not just that, and with all other persons. It enables them, meaning us, to find God present in all things. Here's Parker Palmer's take on the effect of this kind of contemplative prayer. He says, in prayer, I not only address the love at the core of all things. Somebody comes to your door, you honor them, you respect them, you address them, you go, wow, thanks for coming. I not only address the love at the core of all things, flashing lights, I listen as that love addresses me, calling me out of isolation and self-centeredness into community and compassion. Our listening heart is called into that space. So contemplative prayer helps us find unquestionable good, divine love present in ourselves, our partners, our families, neighbors, even politicians. No, politicians, people in the news, everyone, everywhere, in all things. And from another book by Thomas Keating, this is what, well, we'll get to that in a sec. Another book by Thomas Keating called Invitation to Love. He writes the effect of centering prayer, and this is on your sheet. I'm not going to put it up there, but it's on your sheet. But this is, well, just open to this. The level of deep rest accessed during the prayer period loosens up the hard pan around the emotional weeds stored in the unconscious, of which the body seems to be the warehouse. There's a couple hours on that one we could go into, and we do. The psyche begins to evacuate spontaneously the undigested emotional material of a lifetime, opening up new space for self-knowledge, freedom of choice, and the discovery of the divine presence within. Wow. So, forget the word how right now in terms of how does this work, but this willingness to be that still and that open just literally allows grace to do its thing. What if that was enough? It's a pretty huge return on investment, I would say. So again, in summary, contemplative life, this is on the front. You have this, just putting it up again. The abiding state of union itself, in which one is habitually and continuously moved in prayer and action by the Spirit. And again, it's Thomas Keating. And this is from his book, Open Mind, Open Heart, which is also referenced on that sheet. So you may have gotten word of this next thing we're going to do, which is, I know why you're all here. What I've done is I've asked Lola to sing us a song. Yes. And it illustrates the importance of yielding to this abiding state of union, where we are moved in prayer and action by the Spirit. The song is on your sheet. It's on the back side. It's simply called Hymn. And the words and music are by Brooke Fraser. And Lola is going to perform it for us. And if you want, you can read along. I'm not going to have the words up here, but you might want to just take it in contemplatively. Just let it in and see where it goes, both the music and the words. Just breathe it in as Lola sings to us about her life and about our life.
If to distant lands I scatter, if I sail to farthest seas, would you find and farm and gather, till I only dwell in thee? If I flee from greenest pastures, would you leave to look for me? Forfeit glory to come after, till I only dwell in thee.
eyes are watering. I can't see. Thank you, Lola. Wow. Now, in the remaining time, let's try out this approach to contemplative prayer. We typically it's done for 20 or 30 minutes. We'll do like 8 minutes or something like that. But I'm gonna give you a few guidelines. Again, Thomas Keating, one way he defines it in open mind, open heart. I forgot to put that up during the song, but that's okay. We went there anyway. Here's what he says centering prayer is. This is what we're going to try. It's called centering prayer. This is an entrance into the process that leads to divine union, an opening of mind and heart, body and emotions, our whole being to God. So I'm going to explain briefly how it is done. It's a very simple process, and then we'll try it out. It's typically done with your eyes closed, but about 2:30 on a gorgeous day after a big meal, you may want to keep your eyes open, especially in the peace that we're feeling here. But here's the idea. You withdraw your thoughts from the ordinary flow. You withdraw better way to say it, you withdraw your attention from the ordinary flow of thoughts. It's not so much the absence of thoughts, it's just detaching from them. It's not engaging them and thinking about them and planning and analyzing. It's just noticing them. You're opening your whole mind and heart and body, your whole being to God, beyond words, thoughts, and any psychological content of the present moment in your mind. This is not denying or repressing what's in consciousness. We simply accept the fact of whatever is there and just go beyond it. But not by effort, but by just letting go what is there. It's a very sweet, gentle process. It doesn't matter if it's a negative thought, kind of a neutral thought, like what's for dinner, or the most inspired thought you've ever had. Excuse me. The idea is we're letting go of every single thought. Could be the answer you've been waiting for 3 years. We're letting go of every single thought. Because you're totally opening to God. Surrendering the moment and any content to the divine. By this you're telling God, thy will be done. This is how much I love and trust you. Some people, he's described it as sort of watching things float by in a river. There's no judgment. You just very gently just watch them float. So one technique that can help is to use what they call a sacred word. And the word you choose is to remind you to yield to the divine presence. It's sacred not because of its meaning, but because of its intent. It's just a reminder. It can be any word that when spoken mentally reminds you to gently surrender the moment to God. And, Tree? And how does he say it about the feather? Letting the thought land is just like letting a feather land on a piece of cotton. That's how gentle this is. You just let the thoughts go by. So whatever word works for you, it could be Abba, Father, Mother, Christ, whatever. It could be a word that describes your kind of spiritual attitude, like open, stillness, listen, let go, thank you. I often use the word release. So whatever works for you, but this is not meant to be a mantra. It's not like release, 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 release. That's not it. It's just a gentle reminder that when you notice yourself lost in thought, you just gently give the moment back to God. I think of it as a way of saying I love you to God. Centering prayer is more about intention than it is attention. It's a surrendering of everything in your heart to God. It's not so much mindfulness, but heartfulness. Here's a guide from, this is where Thomas Keating discovered it and found it, from The Cloud of Unknowing. And this is the 14th century mystic, this is what he summarizes, the way he summarizes it. He says, lift your heart up to the Lord with a gentle stirring of love, desiring him for his own sake and not for his gifts. This is not so that you get the lollipop or whatever it is you're thinking you need. So, again, we don't have too long to do it, but we'll just do it for maybe 6 or 7 minutes here, which is fine. And I'm going to give you a minute just to think of a word. And then I'm just going to ring the bell here, a little bowl thing. And then for 6 minutes or so, we will just close your eyes and just be in this space of just surrendering every thought to the divine. And you'll know when the time is up because Lola will just play a few chords in the piano from that last hymn. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, so I'll give you a minute. And don't worry about the word. You're just going to do it 6 or 7 minutes. If you want to do a new word next time, that's fine. I'm not checking. So it'll be fine. But don't spend the entire 6 or 7 minutes trying to pick a word. That word's not working for me. That one's not working. But I could use this word. Oh, he likes release. I should use that word. Just if all that stuff comes up, just watch it. Just go, oh, there goes that chatterbox mind. Okay, so I'll give you a minute or so to pick a word. I'll ring the bell and just start right in. On the handout, there's just one side is blank and the other side is a song. So there may be, I'm going to sing a song for you later. So I just thought, just kidding. But there may be a song. What? Yes. Thank you. There are a number of slides that I'll be showing, and it felt to me like there was just too many for a sheet, but once I saw some of the sheets that have been handed out, that may not have been the case. But anyway, if you're interested, just sign up the email in the back, and I'll send out electronic copy of all the slides of both talks. So that's easy. So some of the things that I'll be showing up here, the different citations, it'll say where they're from, but if you want actual copies of them, then you can just sign in the back, and that's how it works for this one. All right, we got the birds chirping here, joining us. All right, thank you. Today's focus here, it's going to build right off of what we've been hearing and experiencing, receiving the light of Christ by running at the darkness. I love paradoxes. So there's one to start with. I'm going to start with a quote by Carl Jung. And he said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Just be with it. By making the darkness conscious. This has been 100% true in my experience. Most of our challenges keep reoccurring because we're not conscious of the real issues that are causing the suffering. They're embedded more in our unconscious. As we spoke about yesterday, that's why centering prayer can be so effective, because it allows these things to bubble up, and it also allows truth to bubble up. Divinity is also buried. We can see this same counsel in the following statement. The darkness in oneself must first be cast out in order to rightly discern darkness or to reflect light. It's from Eddy in her miscellaneous writings. Another paradox. Wait, I'm supposed to cast out the darkness so that I can discern darkness. You don't have to get this logically. Just sort of be with it so that we can discern darkness or to reflect light. To me, this is Eddy encouraging us to run at the darkness, which she and really all prophets have done throughout their lives. She refers to this kind of idea constantly in her writings, even though they're some of the least referred to passages. This is not the funnest part. Here's one that is a little more familiar. The knowledge of evil that brings on repentance is the most hopeful stage of mortal mentality. I hate it when that happens. It's from the first address in the Mother Church. The willingness to go into the darkness. The first stage is of getting a proper sense of sin. So the willingness to go into that space, and then the second stage is repentance. So the most hopeful stage is the knowledge of evil. Seeing it for what it is or for what it isn't. But we have to see it. So I'd like to share an example from my own life of how I've embraced running at the darkness. It's definitely been the hardest issue that I've ever dealt with, and it's in relation to my marriage. And all of this is shared with my wife, Annie's blessings. She'd be happy to be here, and she's heard it before as well. She kind of participated in it somehow. Some of you have heard little versions of this, but possibly not in this context. I was feeling deep judgment, and if at any point you can relate to any of this, but if your spouse is here, then you don't have to put your hand up, it's okay. That would be we'd need the afternoon. I was feeling deep judgment, blame, fear, resentment, anger, disappointment, and more. For those of you who were here last year to Silomar, I talked about these 3 different cycles. We also touched on it on the pre-conference retreat. This atrophy cycle, which is sort of an ego cycle, that was alive and well. That's definitely what I was experiencing. So in June 2010, after 22 years of marriage, I felt the need to really find and step into my authentic heart and my authentic self. And I didn't feel that I could do that in the current form that the marriage was in. So we separated. This was a huge step for me into the unknown. And an incredibly trusting step. It literally was not more than 1 step at a time. All I knew was that it wasn't working the way it was, and I was not being authentic and really in touch with my heart. I had put that on hold to work hard, to provide a living, to do all the things we needed to do. And I needed to find who I was at that heart level. And I'm not suggesting this is the path. This is just has been my path. So I was miserable. I can do happy, but underneath there was a lot of miserable. And to me, life is too precious to live in hell. And I had tasted heaven, but at that point, I gave up just sort of trying to metaphysically muscle my way through, Because for years I had dedicated myself to 2 to 3 hours a day of deep commitments and deep study, and that was all good. And this had laid the foundation that truth ultimately has us covered, that all is well. So I had that foundation. I think that's part of why I had the courage to do this, because I knew, bottom line, that all was well. But I was not feeling that. I was not experiencing that. I kept letting my kind of spiritualized ego take over, saying, yeah, all is well here, so I don't need to deal with the tougher issues. Finally, this is what I realized. This is from St. John of the Cross, who is a Spanish 16th century mystic. Amazing man. We talked about him more in the pre-conference retreat. And here's what he said. In order to come to the knowledge that you have not, you must go by a way you know not. Another little bit of a paradox there. So I'm going to go the way I know not. So how do I go? I don't know. But I'm going. That's why one step, I couldn't do more than a step at a time. And even that was scary. But I just felt impelled. I absolutely didn't know how to deal with the space that I was in the marriage. I'd periodically reached out for help over the years, but now that I look at it, I kind of call it safe help. Because what happened was the people that I talked to gave me absolutely amazing, absolute truths. And it kind of lifted me up, but it also kind of spiritually bypassed. I didn't have to actually deal and get into what was really going on there. And as much as I'm in this field, I didn't know you could actually talk to people that wouldn't do that, that would sort of help you really deal with that. Or maybe I kind of knew it, but I couldn't go there, or I didn't go there. I felt stuck in the darkness of a hopeless marriage. Not what I expected. I intuitively knew that there was a way out, but my only option was to go by a way I knew not. And so it was a huge question of how do you go? That's probably why I didn't go forever. It's just like, well, no, you can't do that. You can't leave. In my mind, separation and divorce was previously, it was unthinkable because we had young kids and the kids were growing and you just can't do that. So we'll work it out. But the separation lasted for what seemed like a very long 7 months. Each of us faced our stuff and ran at our darkness in our own way. We each really tried to move out of blame and take full responsibility for our individual happiness and peace, and this was not easy. Especially when our conditioned patterns of dealing with these issues was to avoid them, either through denial, just pushing them down, untrue, not supposed to have bad feelings, or blame. I think I got a master's in both. Lots of churning, lots of burning, trusting God, walking as led, authentically embracing the unknown, literally as best I could. You have a question, or are you just saying you can relate? Okay. Yeah. I think we've heard a lot about that, so I'm not going to, it may come out a little bit later, but basically what my thinking was at that point was anything negative I'm not supposed to feel. So you just deny it, which may be helpful in the disease arena or not, but in the sin arena, I don't think that's really the way it's dialed up. Because she says, Eddie says, if you sin, are you a sinner? And she goes, yes. Oh, great. So here I am, I'm a sinner. I thought my wife was a sinner. What's the heck is. But basically I just pushed it down because you're not supposed to do that. That's not real. I'm not supposed to be on my experience. If I get high enough, it won't be there. Problem was it was in my luggage compartment, so wherever I went, I sort of was taking it with me. But yeah, I think we kind of get that. I don't think I've ever felt so alone as in those 7 months. Yet at the same time, so connected. It's really hard to put into words, but not connected to people, just connected to really trusting that I'm not going to die. And if I die, I'm still going to be okay. It's just like there's something bigger going on. Some people said, you're ripping apart your family. You're going to lose your company. This is the counsel that I got. You know, your daughter's about to start her senior year at Principia High School. How can you do this? Good question. I don't know how I can do it, but here I am. My thought was I'd been putting these feelings, really my heart, on hold and putting the family first for 22 years. And at this point, I had to just find out who I was and honor that. See where these deeper valuing of myself, where would it lead me? So I felt this step into my authentic heart, whatever that was and whatever that would lead. I can relate to this statement. See if you can. All things earthly must yield to the irony of fate, or else be merged into one infinite love. It happens to be from the autobiography of Eddie. As much as I've read that, that was new to me looking at that again. I was going to choose the latter. I'm not really a fate guy. More of an athletic approach. Kind of let's step into this. It's just to me, just drift with it and see where it goes is not really my path. But lest you think it was all nice, kind of an inspired journey, here's another quote that illustrates both what Annie and I feel like we could have written, and certainly we acted this out. If a man is jealous, envious, or revengeful, he will seek occasion to balloon an atom of another man's indiscretion, inflate it, and send it into the atmosphere of mortal mind for other green eyes to gaze on. It was juicy. And that's only the first half. This is Eddie again. You thought you didn't write this stuff? He will always find somebody in his way. Yeah, that's no question. I definitely found somebody in my way. And just try to push him or her aside. We'll see somebody's faults to magnify under the lens that he never turns on himself. And this was not me consciously doing it. This was me ignorantly doing it. I'm doing the best I can. This is 3 hours of prayer, and this is how I'm acting. I was doing my best, and it wasn't pretty. I thoroughly believe that if I could have done better and had the capacity to be in touch with it, I would have. And it's true for my wife, it's true for any one of us. This was my best shot, and this could describe what it felt like. I kind of lived with the quote, although I didn't voice it too often, that you've heard. I don't know who the author is, but most people live lives of quiet desperation. That's kind of what my experience was. I kind of knew that that was not ultimately true, but I'm kind of going, wow. Yeah. So each morning as I awoke, I felt free for about 0.5 seconds until my conscious thought kicked in. This conditioned mind would kick in. It would remind me of the human situation, and I felt like I was punched in the stomach, literally, just sitting there. But I had a taste of freedom each morning for half a second. So, believe it or not, that was big. Going, okay, there actually is peace independent of my experience. I'd love to have it for more than 0.5 seconds, but So it would take me another 2, 3 hours really of prayer, of spiritual inquiry, dictation, taking notes, asking God, what do I need to see, study, just not to feel empty and hollow, to find some peace and regain my equilibrium, and to be able to work and go about my day. Anybody ever experienced anything like that? Okay. So in October 2010, we separated in June, I was really struggling. Lasting peace was nowhere near. I definitely felt discouraged. So I decided to attend the School for the Work from Byron Katie. That's a 9.5-day program. She's an amazing, awakened spiritual teacher, well-known author. Many of you may have read her. She helps millions of people around the world, cross-denominational. She helps them get free from these self-imposed limitations and egoic consciousness. She is just literally pure love, just an amazing woman. And she teaches a prayerful method that's just a method of self-inquiry that's very simple, and it goes directly to the areas where you're stuck in your egoic conditioning. It's just 4 questions and some turnarounds. You can find it it's called The Work. You can find it at thework.com. And there's videos of her. But each day on the program, it was a relentless commitment to exploration and facing your fears from 7 a.m. in the morning till 10 at night. Absolutely no outside contact. There were 200 of us there. There was a staff of 65. And she was there the whole time. When it was over, one thing was clear, well, maybe I should say deepened. And that is that I could no longer justify blaming Annie for my problems. That is not to say I didn't want to anymore. That feeling was still there. And I knew that intellectually before. I kind of really, I knew that. I taught that. That's fine. But I really got it at a very different level. So it became unmistakably clear that it's actually a cop-out. So the thing that I was sort of relying on, which was blame, was now a cop-out. Sitting with that didn't really work. So I had to go deeper into my own beliefs, my own shadows, the own darkness, and find out where I was stuck. It was evident that I had to take 100% responsibility for my own happiness and peace. And again, I knew that, but I'm starting to get this at a different level. But without this, I would not be able to find the light of Christ. Because at that point, the light felt sort of an abstract space. So things were becoming clear. I'm not using the word easy, but things were definitely becoming clear. During the Christmas holidays, she left and spent it with her brother in California. And I just tell you this just to show you that things were still not peachy keen. We were really thinking about separating. We met with a lawyer, all this kind of stuff, or divorcing. In January 2011, I attended a 5-day silent retreat with Ajay Shanti. Some of you have heard me talk about him before. He lives around here. He's a California guy who, in his early 50s, enlightened, cross-denominational, spiritual teacher, and absolutely amazing man, just pure love. And this was over here at Mount Madonna, not too far from here. And each day involves 6 periods of 40 minutes sitting in silence. Oh, Jamie would love that, wouldn't she? 6 40-minute periods. Lots of walks in nature on your own. He also gave a talk for about an hour, and then he answered questions in the evening. There were, again, a couple hundred of us there. If you had a question, you could speak. Otherwise, you were in complete silence the whole time. Every meal was in silence. Silence for 5 days, no outside contact. Toward the end of the retreat, a vital question was asked. And again, I'd kind of thought of it before, but the timing, this was clearly just grace. The timing was what really arrested me. And the simple question was, what do you really want in life? Like, bottom line. And it was instantly clear to me that I wanted to learn to love without judgment and do it. Because I knew that if I could do that, I'm happy, I'm peaceful, all is well, relationships bloom, things work. And when I don't, it's miserable. So that became my top priority versus trying to figure out, am I staying in the marriage, am I leaving the marriage? To learn to love without judgment and do it. That's all that mattered. So it was sort of like I went into a new room. And that's what the furniture was. That's what everything was. Adyashanti then said, once you're clear on your response, you have to run at the darkness to face whatever comes up. So once that purpose, that motivation, that drive is there, then we got to be able to run with it at the tough spots. So it was very clear to me, again, not easy, but it was clear that if this is really what I want, then this is what I'm going to have. I'm used to training, and I can train. No one could keep me from learning to love without judgment. No one can keep me. I'm not giving that to anybody. The ability to keep me from learning to love without judgment and doing it. So I decided I'd go back to the relationship and either love without judgment, or when it was hard, I was going to learn. So I'm a student. I'm just going to learn. So I'd stand there and take whatever would come at me and see if I could do it without judgment. Sounds easy to say that. At this point, I still had no desire to be married to Annie. But it also was very clear to me that through this activity, I would be told, should I stay in the marriage or not? Because I could feel things dropping away. I could feel confusion, frustration dropping away. I really had to lean into these tough conversations because I'd only had 22 years of judging. Still at this point, back in my mind, I thought it was Annie that needed to change. But what was fascinating was with this new conviction from the Katie program and then this conviction with Adyashanti, it actually started to become irrelevant whether or not she changed. Again, we hear that, but see if you can feel into that. I knew that I needed to change, and I was going to do that. This quote, to me, nails this pretty well. This again is Eddie. One's first lesson is to learn oneself. Having done this, one will naturally, through grace from God, forgive his brother and love his enemies. So for 22 years in the marriage, I didn't really learn myself. I learned sort of a spiritualized view, which is great, but I didn't get in touch with it all the way down, as we've been hearing about from all our speakers, and David has shared so heartfelt with us. So I definitely had made Annie into an enemy, and since she was not loving me the way I thought she should. So here's the key. If you're ever in this kind of situation, here's the key. You might want to even jot this down. This is what if I'd done this earlier, it would have worked. I realized all I needed to do was make a detailed list of everything I needed her to say and do so that I could feel unconditionally loved by her. Once I'd given her the list, all she needed to do was master it, live it 24/7, 365, and we would live happily ever after. What's the issue? Okay, I think we're clear. Let's go to lunch. I mean, it's like... The bottom line, though, with that is she doesn't get to give me a list either. There's no way. I'm not going to be happy if I have to do her list. Works for me. Yeah, it's just, yeah, right. So Eddie goes on to say, It's the citation. To avenge an imaginary or actual wrong is suicidal. Dang. I can't honestly say I consider it suicide, but maybe homicide, but not suicide. Just saying. Probably wouldn't have done it, either one, but let's just say the thought came up. It's my Enneagram type. We'll talk about that. But I was certainly avenging perceived wrongs. So I guess I was on an unconscious death spiral because I was doing that. So I've asked Lola, our dear sister here, to serenade us again. And come on out. That's great. Thank you. This song to me really captures where grace was taking me at this point. So if you can relate to anything that I've said, see if you can relate to this song. The words will not be up here. They're on the handout. But again, you may want to just be with the music, be with the song, open your heart into this space, and just close your eyes, breathe it in. And here's a good buddy of mine named, this is Amelia Farrell. That's called undifferentiated oneness, that look. Literally, when she looked at me that way in October, I was just transfixed. This is grace that is in us, but we forget. So we get to learn, unlearn, and rediscover that light.
Part of you, a part of me, is frozen in a tragedy. So many words left unsaid are still here ringing in your head. Let all the demons that led you here disappear. And if you wanna live, forgive. We walk this world with wounded hearts, define our faces by our scars. So pain begins to taste like freedom, and bitterness is who we are. Before the ones that love you here disappear. If you wanna live, forgive. Let this pain pour out like water through a sea. Hear the sentence say and be set free. Oh, sweep the wreckage to the safe side of the street for you.
Let's thank Lola. Wow. So we stayed together. Annie and I stayed together. It's been 4.5 years, and at this point, it's actually never been better. But that's because life has never been better. The marriage is just one aspect of life. We both put life first. We each continue to run at and embrace the darkness. The Enneagram has been an absolutely vital tool for each of us because it's a quintessential tool to help us drop judgment and listen with compassion. So that's been huge. We'll be opening that up this afternoon in some of these breakouts. The work by Byron Katie has been huge. 2 years ago, Annie went to the school for the work, and she's now a candidate in the Institute for the Work, which is a 300-hour over 4-year training program. And the work, I teach the work in some of the things that I do. There's more resistance to that than anything else that I teach because it goes right at the ego. And this is what she's doing. That's a big deal. It's huge. So she currently facilitates people in that process. And she's actually even now an assistant coach for some of the 2-year programs that I do. A couple people in the room are in that class, and she's the assistant coach. I mention this because 5 years ago, and she's also listed on the website facilitating people through the work. 5 years ago, this would not have been in the realm of possibility. I would have thought you were nuts if you brought this up. Watch out for life. Thank you, Grace. During the transition, renamed the organization from the Educare Learning Institute to the Unlearning Institute to reflect the emphasis on running at the darkness as guided by the light of Christ. Here's a quote from the book of Matthew that really, to me, sings to this space. I'm sure you'll recognize it. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. I was finally, not that I've arrived, or I am finally, letting my consciousness be single around what I really want in life, and it literally is filling my entire body, my career, my relationships, my life. Today. In a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, he illustrates the process that I went through. He says, life creates situations that push you to your edges, all with the effect of removing what is blocked inside of you. The purpose of spiritual evolution is to remove the blockages that cause you fear. I would suggest that it's not spiritual evolution if that's not happening. Are you willing to open to and look at what is blocking your ability to love and thus causing you fear? I'll say that again. Are you willing to open to and look at what is blocking your ability to love and thus causing you fear? Are you willing to open to and look at what is blocking your ability to love and thus causing you fear? I was going to do an exercise with you. We're running a little late, so I'm still going to introduce you to the exercise. We just won't do it together here, but I'm going to give you the 3 questions because these are seriously powerful questions. Your ego is going to love that we're not doing it right now. I guarantee you. First off, here's the first part of it. Think of a specific relationship where you find it difficult to love someone. This could be somebody close to you. It could be a relative, a church member, a colleague. It could be a politician. It could be an executive who's destroying the environment. Whatever works for you. But it needs to be specific. And if you don't know the person's name, just, that executive that voted on blank or what. But just really identify just one. If you got a lot, that's fine. You can do it more later. But it could be close to home. Yeah, one situation, one specific person that you find it difficult to love. Could be me for bringing this stuff up. Whatever works for you. So here's the questions to consider. And again, we won't take time to do this here, but here's the first one. What are you believing that is blocking your ability to love this person? That's the first question. What are you believing that is blocking your ability to love this person? The next one is a bit of a zinger. What are you afraid might happen if you love this person? If you really let yourself love this person, what are you afraid might happen? Why is that so scary? And then the real zinger, what's the benefit to you of not loving this person? You really want to sit with that one. What is the benefit to you of living in judgment, of hatred, of disgust, of whatever you want to call it? So I was going to give you just 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'd take some answers and talk about it for 4 or 5 minutes, but I'm happy to stick around afterwards and do that. But dwelling with these questions really takes some courage, some humility, because you'll feel the resistance to go into that and really look. Once you identify the darkness, or as Carl Jung said, make it conscious, which is what this does. This makes the darkness conscious, or as Eddie calls it, a proper sense of sin. This gives you a proper sense of sin. Once you do it, you see how ridiculous it is. Proper sense of sin is that it's ridiculous. It's nothing. But because we act it out, we don't get that. So that's what we're doing. We're seeing it, but we got to go into it to go through it. Then it stands out as a placeholder for truth. It's been standing in the place of truth in your life, consciously or unconsciously. And then we get to let it go and come home. Return to truth. I'll say it even a little stronger. I'll suggest to you that you will not evolve and find your authentic heart without running at your darkness in some way like this. I've yet to meet a spiritual teacher who has not taught that. Grace will lead you there if you are willing to go. Michael Singer continues his quote. If you truly want to grow spiritually, you'll realize that keeping your stuff is keeping you trapped. Eventually, you'll want out at any cost. That was it. Absolutely was it. I tried and tried and tried unconsciously to avoid my stuff. I dealt with the comfy stuff, a little dusting here and there, but this completely describes the transformation process that I went through and am still in. It was not until I was willing to leave all for finding the light of Christ in my heart and wade through the stuff that I actually became released, or am becoming released, or released at least from that space. Not in any way suggesting I'm arrived. He continues by saying, you will then realize that life is actually trying to help you. Dang. But if you get that too soon, if you get that in the middle of the stuff, it's not helping me. So it's at this point you start, wow, okay, I'm starting to see something here. I'm going into this. Life is surrounding you with people and situations that stimulate your growth. I had a resilient wife. Wow. Amazing family that didn't cast me out. Dedicated friends. Byron, Katie, and Adyashanti, they don't know me, but I know them. They're buddies. They're a huge help. He continues by saying, you don't have to decide who's right or wrong. You don't have to worry about other people's issues. I knew that intellectually, as I said, but my heart never really believed it until I went through this. So this lesson has been absolutely huge for me and is really sinking in. I now more frequently catch myself when I get caught in somebody else's business. And this is amazing too. Actually, Annie and I have a relationship where we can even mention that to each other. Whose business are you in? Whether I'm in hers or somebody else's. And we could not do that before because you just can't talk to each other. But now we're actually on the same plate and we're kind of on the same team and helping each other. But it's like, wow, this is fun. So when I'm in somebody else's business, I get out of Dodge as quickly as possible because that's not where I belong. And the last slide by Singer, here's the way he summarizes it. You only have to be willing to open your heart in the face of anything and everything. And permit the purification process to take place. Opening our heart in the face of anything and everything. In this way, by running at the darkness, you will receive the light of Christ. I'm going to close with just this brief excerpt, just a couple of slides from Eddie. And this is from her autobiography. And again, I just hadn't noticed the title of this before, but she calls it Emergence into Light. You may be familiar with it. Please notice the deep emphasis on the heart. Previously, the cloud of mortal mind seemed to have a silver lining. Anybody relate to that? Kind of, yeah. But now it was not even fringed with light. That would be total darkness. That's where she's sitting. Matter was no longer spanned with its rainbow promise. The world was dark. I call this being completely checkmated. I don't know where to go. I give up. I give up, God. Thus it was when the moment arrived of the heart's bridal to a more spiritual existence. When the door opened, I was waiting and watching, and lo, the bridegroom came. The character of the Christ was illumined by the midnight torches of spirit. My heart knew its Redeemer. May you be willing to run at the darkness so your heart can know your Redeemer of light.